Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to History of Horror Cinema, my personal podcast tour of the good, bad, and the ugly of horror movie history. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe. Education for Death, The Making of the Nazi, 1943. When we think of a Walt Disney animated film, what comes to mind? Cute anthropomorphized animals? Cheery songs? A fantasy world where good conquers evil into a rousing, lush, orchestral happy ending? How about innocent children being torn from their families, brainwashed into the monstrous cruelty of Htler Youth, crushing human souls, killing defenseless animals, and with no future except a miserable death as cannon fodder for a horrific dictator? Well, in January 1943, Disney did just that, with one of 32 propaganda films they contracted to produce for the Allied war effort. This was the extraordinary short cartoon film Education for Death, The Making of the Nazi, inspired by the 1941 book of the same name by Gregor Zima. His source text was a grim warning detailing the process of how from birth the terrible Nazi indoctrination of German youth corrupted and shaped them into a formidable enemy. Zima saw it firsthand as an American headmaster at a Berlin school. He fled Nazi Germany on the eve of World War II, smuggling out Nazi textbooks, military manuals for the young, Hitler songbooks, and many other works, which formed the basis of his book. Such uncompromising material is hard to picture in the cuddly embrace of Uncle Walt and his team. Yet director Clyde Geronimi, along with Zima and writer Joe Grant, created a powerful film that cleverly played to the House of Mouse's strengths without softening the bleakness of the message. Geronimi had already directed numerous shorts, as well as being assistant director on Dumbo and a sequence director on Bambi. Grant's writing credits included story work on Fantasia, Dumbo, and another anti-propaganda short, Der Führer's Face. Education for Death begins with a beguiling juxtaposition. A stark red swastika, emblazoned on a black background, is then overlaid with the folksy narrator tone of character actor Art Smith.
What makes a Nazi? How does he get that way? Well, let's look into the process. To begin with, Nazi control over a German child starts as soon as it's born.
He leads us by the hand like a kindly storyteller, but don't be fooled. This is no fairy tale, and his little arrows of gentle sarcasm will puncture the evil depicted as much as the caricatured animation send-ups. Like any children's story, aimed at both kids and adults, the film is careful to show the balancing force of goodness at stake. German parents are not demonized as complicit, but portrayed as decent people forced to turn over their children to the domineering ogre of Nazi doctrine. The opening imagery makes this point very clear. An unassuming young couple approaches an exaggeratedly high bureaucratic desk, at which a looming silhouette of a giant lantern-jawed official sits towering over them. They nervously hand over documents detailing their little boy's racial history and are presented with an official list of forbidden names. Most prominently, anything biblical associated with the Jews. Even this most personal of family choices must conform to the state's decrees. They are presented with a hereditary passport, with spaces for 12 future children. The meaning here is clear also. Your job is simply to be docile brood mares and studs for the fatherland, and we will take it from here. We then see Disney using its mastery of the fairy tale form to depict the propaganda imposed on German youth from the cradle. Nazi ideology retooled Norse mythology and children's folk tales to present an image of racial purity and strength through valiant combat. The tale of Sleeping Beauty is told, with a grasping, snaggle-toothed witch cackling over Germania's unseen slumbering form, to represent the threat of democracy, who is then beaten back by a helmeted hero knight in shining armor. The animators then inject propaganda of their own through satire by revealing Beauty as a generously proportioned operatic Valkyrie, besotted by the knight, who turns out to be none other than an apoplectic Hitler. Charles Udels, who voiced this bellowing pugilist comically swinging his boxing gloves, also voiced Nazis in Der Führer's Face. Enraged, he sounds remarkably like Mel Brooks doing Hitler. An apt comparison, as Brooks also believed that satire was as potent a weapon against his favorite whipping boy as serious condemnation. The mood of the film then takes an increasingly ominous turn, as we begin to see that Nazism allows no room for even temporary weakness. When Hans falls ill, his poor mother fears that he will be taken away by the state and never heard of again. The Nazi Party extinguished all who were not sound of limb and mind in pursuit of the genetically engineered master race. A shadowy soldier in the doorway threatens her that even her indulgent mollycoddling will cause him to be removed if she does not stop. Our narrator administers a jagged little pill to his callousness in calling him this Superman for his compassion. Education for Death finds room to lampoon not just Hitler, but also his influential key men. Joseph Goebbels, the propaganda minister whose techniques held sway decades later, is shown as a grinning, cadaverous vampire. The beefy bully Hermann Goering, architect of the Nazi police state and head of the Luftwaffe Air Force, teaches Hans's class about the survival of the fittest by drawing a fox who gobbles up a cornered rabbit. This is no cute Aesop's fable, though. It is a further grotesque meditation on weakness, brainwashing impressionable minds into taking advantage of it in others, not defending it. Hans is punished for still having some vestiges of humanity toward the rabbit by being made to goose-step over to the dunce cap. Awfully soon, however, he is converted by those who get the message, chiming in lockstep that the rabbit deserves to die for its cowardice. Once again, the narrator undercuts their shrieking fervor with "nice kids." It is truly disturbing not only to see these little cherubs Sieg-heiling with ferocious commitment, but then to see little Hans go the way of the pod people. His face, turning from the soulful, angelic innocence of Bashful from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs into the demonic little saluting soldier, is as tragically powerful as the golden-haired boy in Bob Fosse's Cabaret, whose pure soprano morphs into Nazi hatred during Tomorrow Belongs to Me. By the time the climax comes, there is no escape for these perverted souls or their victims to come. The furious echo chamber of the classroom has opened out into a deliberately hellish blood-red sky, under which book-burning and the relentless march of accepted genocide is the inexorable path awaiting all the maturing Hitler Youth. But there will be no brave rescuer to awaken these boys from the hypnosis of heartless monsters. As Wilfred Owen put it, they must die as cattle and carry out the unfeeling mass murder of others to the doom of all. All trace of what could have been Hans disappears. He wears literal swastika-branded blinkers and chains into the abattoir of war. The narrator mourns him and the others with these final words. For now his education is complete. His education for death. After the war ended, Gregor Ziemer's invaluable evidence proved even more vital when an excerpt from his book was cited by the prosecution in the Nuremberg trials. A happier legacy was that Clyde Geronimi graduated to fully directing some of the most beloved Disney features of the 1950s, including Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, and The Lady and the Tramp. Joe Grant often collaborated with him and went on to a long career, with further writing credits extending into the 1990s on the stories for the features Mulan and Pocahontas and the short Lorenzo in 2004, before dying just before his 97th birthday. Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, please don't forget to hit subscribe.